care about 2020 anymore at all, right?
Yeah.
So 2021 is an awesome, awesome year. We actually have to touch each other and eat food and drink together and all of this kind of stuff. So back we go on to our annual schedule, and we're really happy to bring this to you. I know a lot of you guys have been in business forever, and some of you guys are newer in the business. So it may just be a repeat, a renewal, an encore of what you know, but things do change. And these gals and guys that we have are the experts in the business, so they will be here to answer any question, no matter how stupid you think it is, because there are no stupid questions, just stupid people. So you thought it was good. So anyway, so Kara, we're going to start with insurance, and we're going to go into mortgages, and we're going to talk about some contracts, and then we're going to end up with title. And then those who want to maneuver over afterwards, over to Paradise Pizza and just continue the socialization and one-on-one with our sponsors, we're welcome to do that as well. So we're going to start with insurance because that seems to be the thing that most people have the question about, and it changes more than anything else. So Kara from Chapman Insurance is on, and we're keeping it low-key. No fancy PowerPoints or anything.
Yes.
Cool.
I'm Kara. I work with Chapman Insurance Group. I have been with them for over 6 years now. You guys have probably seen me out and about. If you haven't, I'd love to meet you. I did have a presentation that if you've been with JJ's brokerage for a while, you've probably seen it over the years. However, I decided not to use it today because I felt like a lot of the info was outdated, and we have a puppy here. Sorry.
I'm trying not to be this
So I did decide against the presentation because you guys are familiar with the fact that insurance is upside down, it's all over the place right now. So I just kind of wanted to do a Q&A with you. Want to answer any and all questions that you guys have, anything that you've seen that's changed or you're unfamiliar with, or any questions that you might have. I will start off by saying rate increases. Holy rate increase, right? So Irma happened, what is that, 3 years now? 3 years ago, and I'm gonna just kind of give you the perspective from the insurance carriers when Irma came. So before Irma, I think the last biggest storm that we experienced was Charlie, correct me if I'm wrong, which was 2004. So that was a pretty huge time span difference. Irma was probably the most significant storm we went through since Charlie. Going into Irma, from an insurance agent standpoint, we had all of our carriers, our top carriers in the game, came in, guns blazing, ready to write every policy they could get their hands on up until 3 days before the storm, which was unheard of. So as you can imagine, I think we had our biggest call volume that year. We had over like 1,500 calls in a day. We track our calls, we're crazy like that. So every carrier was wanting to write policies up. It didn't matter. Even flood carriers were not honoring the 30-day wait period. They were lowering it to a 14-day wait period. So we wrote a ton of business. Now on the flip side, the carriers are extremely gun shy. Why, you ask? Because they took on all of this business, not expecting the catastrophe that Irma created. So 3 years later, I know it's 3 years. Almost four, but we are just now experiencing the rate increases, the financial instability, and all of the guideline changes. So I can just tell you, we've had a lot of carriers that have dropped out. We've had carriers that went MIA through the claims process. We couldn't even get a hold of them. We're like, what do you do? They've got pending lawsuits. And then we had carriers that remained strong. However, they are experiencing some financial instability from the storm. So they have created severe underwriting guidelines, which I'm sure you guys are running into. One of the topics is the roofs. Where who has had a listing or anything that you've been told you cannot get insurance because the roof is too old, right? Okay, so background info. Before Irma, the Architectural shingle, 3-tab shingle, roof age guidelines were 15 to 20 years. We have carriers that are not allowing any roofs newer than 5 years.
That's crazy.
Right now.
Oh my
Yes. Yes. So you are as frustrated as we are. We're probably more frustrated because we actually get to talk to the underwriters and hang up on them if we want to. We're not supposed to. We get in trouble sometimes. But we are extremely frustrated as well. The guidelines are insane. It's ludicrous. How am I supposed to call my client or your client and they just got their roof replaced 5 years ago? It's in amazing condition. We have warranties on the roof stating they're good for 30 to 35 years, and I'm going to tell them that they can't have a policy because it's not 5 years or newer. Insane. So what we have done in our agency is we've gotten more appointments with new carriers that are fresh, so they don't have that financial instability from past storms or anything, that are willing to write the risks. We have carriers that are still willing to write older roofs. Obviously, you're going to see an increase in premium for that. But a few changes that I wanted to make you guys aware of is plumbing, electric. A lot of these areas need to have been updated within the last 20 years, which is also a little crazy. I mean, if you have a GE electric panel and it's from 1990 and it still works fine and there's no aluminum wiring or no cloth wiring, why can't that be okay? It's not. So one thing that I would suggest to you guys is definitely the listings, or if you're guiding your clients to find a new house, is keep in mind those newer construction homes. Keep in mind the roof age. Be educated when it comes to the electric, when it comes to the plumbing, the HVAC. Educate yourselves so that when you do go to take your client to look at the listing, you're able to tell them, you really like this house, but you're going to be paying a pretty penny in insurance if you don't plan on replacing the roof. I am always available to my cell phone numbers on my card at the front table. If you have just a simple question, shoot me a text, shoot me a call. That way we can make sure you're prepared when you're presenting to your client. Does anybody have any questions that they have experienced with these changes that are going on? Yes, there's also rate increases in the flood. That is guaranteed forever until we're no longer here anymore because we have over $3 trillion of debt to the flood insurance program. So
I have a question.
Yes.
I had a deal recently where we knew at the beginning of the deal we were getting quotes because we luckily have the elevation and all that. The agent said, you know, all the carriers are strict now, blah, blah, blah. You're going to need a new water heater. And so the seller agreed. The seller went ahead and replaced the water heater right away. So weeks later in the deal, we went to go try to, you know, start trying for closing, blocking, and buying new policies. And that carrier said the water heater needed to be 1 foot off the floor, or the policy was $1,200 more a year, which is double the cost of the water heater. Like, it made no sense. So it's kind of like, have you seen anything just totally weird like that? I mean,
yes. I mean,
it's like, what was the
every day, and I'm sure you experience this too. Every day I come into my office, I sit down, and I open my emails, and there are these mind-boggling conditions from these underwriters, and I'm just like, what?
We can understand why. It's like, you know, but you can't even understand.
But and this is why I prefaced with that is the companies that are still in the game, they may not be financially stable enough. So instead of completely backing out of writing insurance in the state of Florida, they are making it impossible for you to place any business with them. Citizens is the same way. They have been that way for years. I can tell you 5 years ago, I went to a insurance convention where all of our carriers are, We ran into Citizens, the marketing rep said, how many policies are you guys writing with us? And I didn't answer because nobody wants to write with Citizens, so we maybe have 1 or 2 on the book. And I said, I don't know, 2, and he's like, that's too many. So that is their, right, it's crazy. Hopefully you're not like posting this live.
No, I'll cut it out.
No,
It's not mine.
We're gonna lose a lot of appointments if that's the case. I feel like I'm giving you guys like the deep dark secrets of the insurance industry, but they don't. So instead of dropping out, they're creating these guidelines, like a 5-year route, that really makes it almost impossible to write insurance, so that they're not getting a high policy count. Their book isn't growing. But yes, I have seen that, and the reason for that was probably a flood policy. The reason for that is because you do have to, they do require that you replace the water heater at a certain age, because obviously it can leak. And then if it's on the ground level, it's gonna damage more than if it was lifted off, they think. Yes.
So they realize they're in the garage.
Yeah, it was in
not
the-
outside.
If the water is
It's not gonna
anywhere,
matter, and there's slope.
Yes.
it's
Yep.
done.
It's
Yeah.
not in the interior.
Yes, they do understand that. We
Yeah.
list that kind of stuff on the applications. It's just where they're at right now.
How is it gonna damage
So
more
what
if it's
do
a
you
foot and a
think?
half off the ground? Isn't it the same
They
weight?
think you'll catch, I don't know.
Catch
don't know.
it before it gets to the ground.
Yeah, I don't know.
So this kind of goes back to like maybe inspections. Should we have like a pre-inspection, or should we have like the insurance agent or somebody come out and preview the home when we get a listing, so we know what the seller might have to fix or credit or do something, so we
Yes.
can make these deals happen?
Yes, so what I would suggest is, and I have made myself available to do this for years, is if you have a client, they're looking at 2 or 3 different properties, you're not sure if this is gonna stick or what, shoot me an email with all 3 addresses. Let me take a look at them, let me present you with options, let me tell you what each address is gonna entail for that to actually close. Because yes, it is like jumping through hoops right now. This is probably the first year in insurance that I was like, should I stay around, or what's gonna happen here? Because I don't know, it is crazy. The rate increases too, over 30% rate increases.
So, on those roofs, you know, and there were a whole bunch of them replaced, obviously. But that's, I mean, they're 3 years old now, if you were on the front side of that.
Yes,
On the ones that are like 4 years and then 6 months, are
it's
the-
eligible.
it's eligible, but at the point where they get 6 months older,
They
are
can
they gonna
face-
continue to?
They can face a non-renewal.
Oh, wow.
What we're hoping for, yes.
20 grand.
What we're hoping for is, you know, eventually, like after Charlie, everything kind of smoothed out a little bit.
Right.
We know that that's gonna happen eventually. It's just gonna take a little bit of time. But in the meantime, we have gained more appointments with carriers that do allow for those risks.
Okay, so
Yes.
next question, you were talking basic 3-tab. Tile?
Tile
Metal,
is like 25 now.
25 years? So if they got a roof, they're allowing?
Yes, and let me also say that that one carrier that doesn't allow 5 years or newer, it's one. We
Okay.
have over 30, you know, so.
Okay.
we're
Start with
like-
that.
Yes, we got ours as well, but,
I was freaking out for
yes.
I had hair when you said that.
Yeah. I should have disclosed, yes, that's only one, but that's the type of things that we're seeing. So it's not, they're not the only one, they are just the most crazy right now. But we do still have other options, that's the thing, but just prepare yourself, prepare your client, and I'm sure you guys feel this on the realtor side. You're going into battle right now, right? Does anybody feel that way?
It's already a battle.
Yeah,
Just to get the house.
yeah.
Just whatever forces
So
most-
prepare yourself. It's not, it may may not be an easy task, but we will make it as quick and painless as possible. We do have over 30 home carriers, over a dozen auto carriers. We're gaining more appointments every day to write those, yes.
Are you seeing that more carriers are asking for a 4-point where maybe they would not have
Almost all of them,
previously?
almost all of them.
Wow.
So I would say get that right off rip.
The 4-point even on newer?
No,
Okay.
20
So
or
what's
30
the cutoff
years.
here?
20 or 30.
Okay.
Roofs, I think, are most important. Verify that. The water heaters, I mean, those are easy fixes. You know, some of our companies even have created a program where they require you to replace your water heater, but they will pay for it. That's a nice perk.
Oh, that's great.
I have a question. Do they look at the history, just like car insurance, they look at my history, I've had 5 accidents versus none. Do they look at the history of the particular homeowner that's applying? If they've had a roof claim in the past 2 years and other claims versus if someone has not had a roof claim, does it help them get a better rate versus the person that had 1 or 2 claims?
It doesn't help you get a better rate. It determines
That
if you're
doesn't seem
eligible.
fair.
Right, it
It's
determines
unfair.
if you're eligible. Roof claims don't typically count against you because those are typically created from an act of God, which the carriers have more favor upon. If you have these clients that claimed all of their food in their refrigerator from Irma and every other thing around their house, it's a little tougher. They're gonna get a surcharge on there.
Okay.
Yes, but that's more of an eligibility thing.
Can I say something about the food in the refrigerator?
Yeah.
If you talk to your CPA, usually you can deduct that from your taxes instead
Yeah,
of
please
putting
don't
it-
file it.
putting it on your
Good
insurance
job.
company.
You know.
So,
Please. Makes me sweat.
it's a deduction, it's a loss for you.
And don't
Yeah.
replace
Not-
the roof
not-
yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, that was another thing. Thank
Can you
you.
say permit?
Permit, yes. Everything needs to be permitted, you guys. Another thing too is if you have a house that you saw got the roof replaced in 2020, but they never tore off the pre-existing shingles and shingled over it, that doesn't count.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Of course not.
The flat roofs over living space, those
They used
have.
to allow re-shingles, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Long
you
time
The
ago.
city will still allow you.
used to
but
be able to
you're-
go 3 layers.
Nope,
Oh, yeah, they don't care
no
what
more.
options.
Yep.
Back when I had hair.
No more. Which was 5 minutes ago. No more, yes. And the flat roofs over living space have a shorter lifespan, you know, because it's normally the rolled roofing, the thinner layer. What else can I tell you about? Do you guys have any other questions? Anything that you've run into?
Can you talk a little bit about the Magic October increases in flood insurance, that like people that don't have flood insurance in October, as of October 1, their rates are going to be more. Those of us that have it
Our
will only-
grandfather,
will get less increase basically, but
yes.
what I've heard is that it will be literally double for people that are buying new policies in October. Is
Yeah,
that
so
true?
I'm not sure about how much of an increase, but like I mentioned before, you're gonna see an increase in the National Flood Insurance Program as long as we live. We just owe way too much money back for there to not be an increase every year. They tack those fees on with surcharges or filing fees or administration fees, things like that. But yes, the grandfather people don't typically run into as high of an increase. But that's also why we have the private flood market. So a couple years ago when we did this seminar, we were cornering the market with the private flood because not a lot of agencies offered that. We did. That was huge. That was huge, especially through Irma. But a lot of the private flood markets now too are kind of gun shy on pulling back, and they're not writing in specific zip codes or their capacity is closed. So it's not as big of a hit as it was a couple years ago, but the private flood market doesn't and won't experience those type of increases. So if your client is eligible for that, or you are with your home, that's definitely something to look into to save you money now and in the long
what would be the eligibility?
To be honest, it depends. We type in the address right now and they tell us.
And you can't have an FHA with
Right.
private.
Right. Well,
Okay.
so certain lenders are different because I have had a couple FHAs where we've worked on it, and they have had private, and only because the verbiage in the policy states that it meets or exceeds the National Flood Insurance Program guidelines, which some lenders are okay with, but it's hit or miss. It's hit or miss. So I just, I kind of feel like we're in a stage, and I'm sure you guys feel this too, that there's just a lot of unknown. We're relearning a lot of things. So any questions that we can address, let us know.
What she brought up, I had heard about an October raise on flood insurance, so if you're preparing for that and you were thinking about selling your home and you're grandfathered in, is it portable to continue the grandfathered in rates on your new purchase after you sell after October? Or are you having to kind of go back into the pool with the general public?
Because it's on a different address,
Mhm.
it's completely different policy.
But I'm saying if you're selling your house,
Is the
That you have
policy
the grandfather
sellable,
in.
so to speak, to the new buyer?
Transferable?
no. If you're the owner and you're benefiting from the flood rate right now, and you know in October it's gonna go up, but not that bad where you live right now, but you're thinking about moving, selling and moving, but now you're worried about selling and moving because
The rate.
will your rate go up, or will you get grandfathered in because the insurance company knows like you just came from a property?
No.
So people might not sell literally because their rates might double down the street on a
Yeah,
different
and
home.
I honestly don't know if it's gonna be a double.
Well, I don't know, I'm just saying if there's a reason.
Depends what
That'll
they offer.
offset the
Right.
increase of our price sale basis.
Or you could use
Because we
that,
really need that
Or
right
use it
now.
for negotiations, if you know that flood
Someone.
insurance is gonna go up $3,000 or $4,000, use that as maybe getting that from the customer to help pay for those costs for the year. That could be a real good marketing tool to sell.
It just
them.
depends.
Pay $5,000 towards your homeowner's insurance or something like that, rather than get a credit.
It used to be for a time period that the new buyer could assume the,
They can still do that. So the only downfall with that is talking your buyer or your seller, into transferring that, because they're not necessarily gonna benefit from that.
sell the house.
If they just renewed their policy and they have 11 months left on that policy term, they could get that money back for selling.
Mhm.
But if they're transferring it, and maybe that, I'm not sure how you guys work, but that may be something that you can work into fees or whatever. But
Maybe the money around in the fund.
yeah, the seller may say, I don't want to transfer that because I could get 11 months worth of premium back. But you can work your magic, I'm sure, the same way we work it.
What's the cutoff when a hurricane comes for people to increase their personal liability for their belongings in the house? Because I worked in insurance before, so I'm just wondering, what was the cutoff? Usually is it like 8 hours before the hurricane's supposed to?
As long as they,
What is the
She's
cutoff?
from Ohio.
as long as they remain open. So obviously you guys are familiar with that box that we all get.
Yeah.
Once we get the box, is typically when the carriers are like, you have until 5 o'clock. I don't know what that's gonna look like this year if we have a storm. Because of how cautious they are right now, I don't know how they're gonna act. You cannot change your hurricane deductible through your policy term. You have to wait till renewal to do that. So keep that in mind when you're renewing your policies. Any other changes you are allowed to make whenever you want until they decide they're shutting down. So, we've had, I don't know if you were here yet, we've had carriers before Irma that stayed open 2 days before the storm, and then we had carriers that shut down a week before the storm.
Right.
So I just think that they're gonna be more cautious this time.
Is that because they're thinking they're in debt, or is it because they're thinking we're gonna have a high hurricane season?
No, that's because we've lost a lot of money. Not us, but the carriers.
Right, last, the later policy came in, it was almost you know, so.
They did not think that Irma was gonna do what it did, and they bit off way more than they could chew, unfortunately.
They're allowed to write their own.
And now we're paying the price for it. So.
We should start having hurricane odds in Vegas.
Great. Well, great, that would be fun.
Another way to supplement your income.
Exactly. Gotta pay that.
The next most popular thing that we love is mortgages and the money so that we can actually get all this stuff done. So, how many of you know Don Hauser? Oh, well, all right, everyone in the crowd. Don is one of our preferred lenders, as you know, with American Eagle Mortgage. She is a past, you're a veteran.
Yeah.
She is a veteran, and she's a mommy and a homeowner and all that really good stuff. She used to bowl, but.
And I'm a what?
You used to bowl with us. Yeah, and you're a veteran.
Yes.
So she's going to share, and she's she's got all kinds of great awards for her mortgage abilities. She has always.
I'm an overachiever. Actually, I learned that I was a super achiever from Tom Harding when I went to one of his conferences. So she gave a little intro. I've been lending for 15 years now. So definitely a long-term, been around a lot. Last year, I think I closed 20 to 25 million, I don't know, 100 some loans. This year, we're on track for probably almost double that. So there's a lot of things that I see. So any weird scenarios come up to me. I'm going to talk about the hurricane, and then I also am handing out a flyer. Anybody that is doing, needing any like down payment assistance or things like that, they need to look at how high the incomes can go and how much money you can get now. So now that we're not getting any of those seller contributions, we're trying to find other ways to make it work. Does everybody have our, can a hurricane or named storm affect my closing? What's the answer? Yes. Yes, it can. So we just want to kind of run through a little bit the hurricanes in mortgage lending. As an agent, you always want to be mindful if that person does have a mortgage. So, being a cash buyer, you have some more flexibility. You might be able to push up your closing, things like that. But when we have a mortgage associated with it, you have to start thinking about delay. So that's like a really big deal. And I know some sellers are like, we need to close, but I also think you have to be compassionate from the buyer's standpoint. Maybe they don't want to close before the storm because what if the house gets damaged? So I think that depending on what side of the coin you're on is really depending on how you're going to feel about it. And I'll give kind of a very sad example. This happened during Irma. It was an elderly couple. They were, I don't know, in their 80s or something along the lines. They wanted to close. We all pushed it. The house got hit, and then they had like $30,000 worth of damage that took them forever to clear up. So I feel like I wish we hadn't done that, but sometimes we're out of control. Like everybody wants to close, and I'm like, oh, hold on. So be mindful of that kind of thing when you're coming up against these closings. Just as we talked about in insurance, the homeowner's insurance must be found prior to that cutoff of the box. So if you know that we have something coming, we definitely want to make sure that that buyer knows that they actually have to pay for the policy. So a lot of times at closing, we are having the policies paid for. The flood always has to be paid prior to closing. But a lot of times, just the homeowners we make paid at closing, everybody's fine, but you're not going to be able to do that with a named storm or a storm watch coming our way.
Can you explain that storm watch? I thought that the watch, the box didn't go into effect until there was actually a named storm.
Sometimes, I don't know that factually how it works, but sometimes they're not going to allow you, like the insurance agent just said, they may just say we're not going to write a policy. So usually it's the box, but sometimes if it's just a storm watch, the carriers might say no. So like she's saying, like as we get super cautious, and keep in mind all the rules are just changing. Like one day we wake up and it's a new rule and we're like, oh, okay. So this is kind of how we're all operating right now, and everybody's just making decisions on the fly sometimes of what they're going to do and what they're not going to do. So that is always where we're just like knowing that a storm is coming. You hear it on the news, it's down in Cuba or, you know, far away, like, you know, start talking to your buyers, like, hey, we should probably bound our policy, you know, before we get there. And that means paying for it. And then always letting know that buyers and sellers may be delayed in coming to town for closing. So that's another thing, when you have people traveling in and out and we start having a storm, we may have a delay because somebody can't physically get here. Or what that, ooh, flashing lights.
It's just our hallway light.
Oh.
No storm, just an exorcist. It's fine.
And then
waiting
the
for
other
Patrick
thing we
Swayze to show up.
experienced, even during COVID, let alone a storm is coming, documents. Think of documents on a plane, you know, so you are having a closing and you have ship your documents to California, they have to come back, and now the transport's shut down because we have no gas to put in the vehicles, we can't get the airplanes in because the storm is coming. So I think that sometimes everybody is so like, we're closing on Friday, and you're like, you're not, you know, and just to me it's like, be flexible, you know, just everybody has to understand that everybody wants to close, but if we can't physically do these things or people physically can't get there, you know, there is going to be a delay, and there's always gotta, I think, talking people, like calming them down and just like, you know, logically letting them know that there will possibly be a delay, you know, warn them. So if we have a, like I said, a storm coming our way, usually the day before a storm is expected to hit, and it could even be a couple days, it really depends where the storm is, but you're gonna have the mortgage companies say, we're not gonna fund, we're not gonna close. So we start getting super cautious, like the insurance people do, that if it's too close to home and too close to comfort, Chase, BB&T, all, you know, Freedom Mortgage, whoever we're getting our money from is gonna say, sorry, we're not doing this right now. So we'll also have a delay in closing because they will not let us give you money. You know, they won't buy the loan from us. So as a mortgage company, we're not gonna close the loan because we might be stuck with a mortgage that we don't want on our books. So that is always something to, you know, as we're getting close, and I always say it's like realtors and insurance people and mortgage people, it's kind of like, let's take like just a little relaxation time, you know, because it was here for Irma, like it was about what, 10 days? How many days was it, like 7?
It took forever.
Yeah, I remember I evacuated and I went to Camp Lejeune. I was at a Marine Corps graduation, and then we couldn't come back. So I went to Virginia, visited my parents in Delaware. It was like, I was gone for 12 days.
So, one quick question, so when you're trying to talk your client down off the ledge, and you've offered them that glass of wine and 2 M&Ms, I got that from her.
I love it.
Good husband.
What kind of timeline would you put out there to tell them, you know, it's not gonna close, but it looks to me like it's gonna be 2 weeks, a month?
I would say 2 or 3 weeks, and that's just historically, because our next thing that we have to do is, once we have the storm, then once the storm passes, we have to have reinspection.
Right.
So not only do we have to figure out, is your property still there?
Right.
Somebody, if you have an appraisal on it, we have to have the appraiser go back out. So picture every single appraiser in Lee County, Collier County, has to go back out. So
Yeah.
we don't know how many is that, you know? And then the last thing, go ahead.
So does the buyer then get charged for 2 appraisals?
No, it's a trip fee. So,
Okay.
yeah, it's usually about $150.
Okay.
So the appraiser gets paid to go back out and update the report, and he hits his gas and his hour time, or her hour time, yeah. So that will definitely be something that happens, and that's what happened in Irma. It was, you know, about 3 weeks then, but there were so many properties. And in our hot market, we might expect more of a delay because we're
Already backed
triple
up.
the capacity. What's our real estate market right now? Triple?
Yeah, you're already way backed up.
Right? We're getting caught up though, that's a good thing. So even if you have a property inspection waiver, and that means that you don't have to have an appraisal on your property, if we have the storm come through, we still have to get it inspected. So that means you might have to have a private inspector go out and bless it and say it's still there, it's in good shape, you know, give me a document of some kind that says this is still there and it's operational and that kind of thing. So that is kind of the meat and potatoes, I think, of making sure that, you know, you are super aware and advise your buyers or sellers, you know, accurately of, you know, what to expect. And I feel like don't be fear in them, you know, just kind of like try to be like, hey, you know, this is normal, this is hurricane season in Florida, you know, just so you know. And I think that goes a lot better than, oh my God, you need to get your insurance and do that. You know, that's gonna be crazy.
So, when you were talking about that, when you talk about documentation, do you need an inspector to document that, or can I go out and take pictures and?
No, and it's somebody
verify?
certified has to do it. Somebody official.
So would that be a certified home inspector that's not necessarily an appraiser?
On
On a cash sale, on a cash sale.
cash sale, I think that can possibly work, yeah.
Depending on the underwriter.
Licensed
Well, actually,
contractor?
not to interrupt you guys, but a cash sale doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah, cash sale, no.
Yeah.
But a property inspection waiver, meaning that they had enough value that
We
we're not.
bought the property with no inspection.
Yeah, or no
Yeah.
appraisal, yeah, because they had enough value in the loan system, if it's a conventional, might not be asking for it. But yeah, I think anybody of authority that's in the, you know, licensed contractor, you know, those kinds of people that it makes sense that they're licensed to look at properties. Usually the underwriter, I've not really had pushback on who officially it is, as long as it's somebody that's reasonable expectation that they could do that job. Any questions on our?
Wow.
That was fast.
Right, what I do every year now, I learned this from Irma as well, is you need all your documents somewhere. I mean, they might be online, which most of us keep, but what if the world goes down? You know, you don't have an internet. Get paper, print it up, put it in paper. What we did was we bought a waterproof backpack. We went to Bass Pro Shop and got a waterproof backpack, because those are really easy to grab. They can fit in your car if you have to flee and leave. And it's a really good thing. It's a nice closing present to someone. Because people aren't thinking about that. You know, get prepared now. Those little rubber buckets are not necessarily waterproof. You know, tell us, put in, you know, like the family jewelry that means something to you. Put in those family photos that mean something to you, and do that at the start of every hurricane season, and just have it ready to rock and roll. Then that saves a lot of stuff. Because you don't need our warranty deeds anymore or anything like that. But you do need your insurance policies. You do need names and contact people of your insurance agents, of your mortgage people, of your realtor. You know, and when a storm is coming, get in touch with your customers, your buyers, and your sellers. Are you going to leave? When are you going to leave? Call me. Let me know where you're going to go. Because you're their eyes and ears here if they leave, right? We don't leave until the very last second.
And I like to tell people anytime, like even a regular transaction, like I have no problem ever calling sellers. Like, you know, I usually get them calmed down, you know, because I'm an easygoing person, and just say, hey, you know, we're doing everything. There's nothing we can do to change this situation, but rest assured we will close as soon as we possibly can, because we know it's important for everybody. And I think just, you know, sometimes I need that other person to give them a phone call.
Yeah.
And that's it. Be ready.
That's the teamwork that did.
But just be ready. I mean, nothing is worth your life. No house is worth your life. That's why they make insurance. That's why they do all this stuff. But if they're under contract, this is our livelihood, right? But we want the houses to stay and all that. So really, you know, the page, it's 12 pages of contracts. Has anybody experienced this? You have. Through Irma and all of that.
Hurricane twice.
Yeah, nobody reads the pages unless they want to cancel the contract or there's a hurricane, right? So there's really only 3 pieces
Force
there.
majeure.
Yes.
2 words, yeah.
Here we go.
Force majeure. And that's the thing you never want to hear on TV, right? Force majeure, domestic terrorism, because insurance doesn't cover domestic terrorism. We hate hearing that word. You know, so think about those kind of things. But when John was talking about how much time do you get and how much time does a lender need, our contract is right in here. So anyway, we just pulled it out so you didn't have to do a whole thing. But page 2, right, line 53 up on the top, I highlighted it so you can kind of see it. but it doesn't put dates in it, so right? Ignore that, ignore A, because that's all about the CD, which we're not even gonna talk about today. We're not gonna talk about that at all. But if force majeure causes us to not be able to close, right? The electric has been shut off, the water's been shut off, you can't cross over the bridge, all of that kind of stuff, or you can't get insurance because of that. Now it says the closing date will be extended as in standard G, which is our favorite word, right, John? Force majeure. I think I'm gonna try it, if I get it right. Did I do it right?
It's a map.
It's a map. It's a map. Anyway, force majeure, that's the part. It's really big, but the main thing you want to look at, all time periods, including the closing date, will be extended a reasonable time.
What's that?
Yes, reasonable time. Up to 7 days after force majeure no longer prevents performance under the contract. They usually count that once there is electricity backup, once the internet starts working, once the government office is open. That's really your biggest key. Is once the government office is open, that means the post office is working, that means FedEx is working, hopefully planes are coming in, and so we can actually do closings. We can do all of that kind of stuff. And since we're more internet based now, we've got all these electronic closings, right, and virtual closings and stuff. That might work. We had that with not Irma, but with Charlie. It was a lot longer because it was like a stop go. Oh, we got some power now. Oh, you can get over to the beach. Whoops, stop go. You can't do anything. Oh, the insurance here, but nope, you can't do this. So it just keeps extending. And what most realtors were wanting to do is, well, I think we should write an extension of a closing date. Don't futz with what's already here.
Because then you know it was already there, okay?
Yes, and we don't want to give our customers any outs. We like to get paid, and we know that they want to really be in their houses and stuff, and they just panic. And when people start panicking, they make stupid decisions, and then they regret it later, and then we're supposed to try to figure out how to help them get out of their stupidity. You know, we can't fix stupid. Let them know that. We can't fix stupid. But when you're listing or when you're working with a buyer now, this is probably a good conversation to have with them now. It's kind of like alligators. There's alligators in Florida. There's hurricanes in Florida. Address it right up front and be calm so that they know there's options for them to do that. This is when you have to really go to work hard once things happen. But don't worry, you're not out on your own. We don't expect you to sit there and try to figure all this out. Joanna, Janet, I, the lenders, you know, we're all going to be here talking and helping and doing that kind of thing. Because once this happens, you need to start going out physically, looking at your property. You know, do you have a property that's listed? How much is damaged and all of that? Which takes us to the next part, backside of your sheet. Does this have the trees in here? No. Yes, it does have trees. Everybody seems to be really whacked out about trees. Have you noticed? Palm trees, all of them. I mean, they love it, and they're fruit trees. All of that kind of good stuff. Right on the bottom, their obligation with respect to tree damage is simply the cost of pruning or removing the tree. So if the 30-foot queen palm went kaboom, the seller is under no obligation to replace it. The contract doesn't say he has to give them credit for it either. That's just a negotiation item for us on there. But the seller is under no obligation to fix those big pieces of landscaping. But this
It's not recovered by insurance?
it's tree, no. When trees do things to other people's property, it's insurance companies don't like to pay for it. Whose tree was it? Where did it fall? You know, oh, that's in your driveway. Well, then that's your responsibility. You know?
Oh, the tree wasn't sick in the first place.
Yeah. Oh, it fell through the pool cage. Yeah.
JJ, I have a question on that. Our association requires us to have a certain amount of trees. What happens there, like a gated community?
See,
Say that again, please.
No, I was fine with it.
Yeah, so the contract says you don't have to fix a tree, but if your association says you think about 3 trees or 12, then it's more than likely that the seller is going to buy a tree. Now, the homeowners association may have something in those too for damages. And that's a really, really good point in there. If you're buying into a community, the community is going to have insurance on community pieces. What if the landscaping is being taken care of by the association? You know, a lot of those things come into play too. So check with your association what kind of rules they have as far as storm shutters, when you have to put them up, when you have to take them down, there's a lot of rules about that. And if your people are buying investment properties and there's tenants in there, what do the tenants have to do? Are there storm shutters for the tenants? Are there, all of that kind of stuff. And that's probably one of the biggest questions you should be asking right now when you talk to any of your homeowners at all is, do you have storm shutters? Where are they? And I know you're 70 years old and you probably can't put the storm shutters up. Do you have a contract? Do you have a person? Do you have something set in place to protect your property? That is really, really, really huge. And if you're listing the property, that's exactly what you want to do. Who is that person that you've hired? So that you have that information as well. Because maybe they're not going to have, they won't have access to the phone or something. But if you know that John's going to come out and put those storm shutters up, that's protecting the seller's property. You as a listing agent are not in charge of getting rid of their patio furniture for them or moving their trees or any of that. Your job is to tell them to move that stuff. Talk to them about, do you have family members? Do you have somebody who's going to do that? People with boats, that's a real mess. I mean, you've got your boat tied up in the back of your property. A storm's coming. What are you going to do with that boat?
Fill it with water.
Do you have a plan?
It's on their soul.
And the cities, a lot of the cities require that. If you don't have a plan, if you don't have a contract with someone to remove your boat, and it looks like it's going to be really bad, they do not want that boat to be airborne. They will come and they will sink your boat. Wow. And you are not going to get paid back for that. They will sink your boat. Because we saw from Irma and all that how those boats were lifted, right? Mm-hmm. Those are the things. They will legally, yes, because it's safe. It's for the safety and protection of the people. Do you know what else becomes airborne? Real estate signs.
Yes, go collect your signs.
Post signs, all of that stuff. If you're using a professional company, like we've been using Sign Up at Naples,
Yeah.
they already have a plan. If it looks like it's coming, they will come and they will put the post down. Your responsibility is to get your panels off, get your little sail headings,
They do go flying.
get that stuff. Yeah, I mean, and they know how to find us because we always put our phone number on there and our picture. So it hits somebody's garage, they're going, okay, Barb Claire, let me see. She's gonna pay for it. So those are the things you want to be doing as an agent to get prepared. That's where all of this stuff comes in. So if after effective date, this is when we discovered how much stuff is roofed, and that's where roofs really became a big issue, right? If the property is damaged more than 1.5% of the purchase price, which isn't a whole bunch, right? A $500,000 house, we're talking not a whole lot of money. If it's less than that, then the seller has to fix it. It's in the contract, he's got to fix it. If it goes over 1.5%, all bets are off. The seller can elect to fix it. The buyer can elect to take the property as it sits and not fix it, or they can walk away and they get their deposit back, right? Everybody can negotiate, and that's where we come into play. And that's when you start talking to your mortgage clerks, and that's when you start talking to the insurance. What's going to get covered? What isn't going to get covered? What can we do, to do all of that? But it's in here. It's pretty straightforward. Just use it, and like I said, take this little cheat sheet, use it with your customers when you're talking with them, and do the same thing with the prep sheet. That's why these wonderful little all-hazard guides are fantastic, and these are great marketing tools. Lee County Emergency Management put these together, so there is zero advertising in here. No other real estate agents in here. So you put your sticker, your cover on here, and then hand these out. These are really nice.
Is that 2021?
These are brand new. They were just delivered at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Where can we get those? We have a whole box here. Yeah, we have a whole case. And we can get more if you need them. I mean, these are really fantastic things to mail out to your customers, to go visit them, door knock, have maybe your open houses, and take articles out of them maybe and even just post them.
The virtual version is in app files as well.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's an ADA compliant PDF version.
Oh, cool. Thank you. So it's all in here. I mean, it's got all the evacuation routes. And if people are considering moving to Florida, again, we've got alligators, we've got hurricanes. Send it over there. Who could send some alligator gummies along with it. But just to make you stand out too. Because it's not promoting Wink, it's not promoting ABC, it's not promoting anything except good knowledge of the county that they're gonna move to. So that's a really, really kind of cool thing. Questions, comments, war stories? I know, like everybody disappeared. Yeah, I mean, you were up in
Tennessee. I was in the
I
mountains.
think Angie was up in Georgia. I mean, everybody was just like
Yeah.
all over the world. The scary thing to us is
I
we can't find you if we don't know where you're at. I mean, then we
So
really
we should
can't.
We do keep a log
Yes.
of anybody that leaves. I mean, we already do that for vacations and stuff like that, but we do keep a log of where everyone's at just for safety because we're your family. So let us know where you are.
That's why we keep those
Please
little
and thank you.
emergency forms.
But what
like
about
who-
for the people
who to
that
call and
say
stuff,
you
because
were-
we really do want to make sure that
Do
you
you
and your
check up
family
on?
are
Oh,
okay.
check up on.
That's our job, is
We
to make
call
sure
it
you have a
every
place to
day.
sleep, you have food to eat,
We called
Yeah.
everything.
Right out the store of my house, and then I'm gonna take off.
There you go.
Because they shut off the air conditioning, electricity, which is miserable.
There you go. I was really
I
lucky.
can fix whatever is.
I was one of the lucky ones during Irma. We lost no power. So my house was where everybody came. We had showers, we had food, we had all kinds of great stuff. And then our office opened up real quick. We had cold shower in our Cape Coral office. Sorry, I was talking, you're taking a cold shower.
Right.
You had a question, Eileen?
Oh,
Or comment?
I was just gonna tell you, so yesterday I was at the Cape Coral Chamber, and they had a presentation, had a board, they had the fire department, head of fire department, head of the police department. I picked one of these up, I was gonna tell you about them, but we did have a speaker that was with one of the IT companies, and I'll give you a copy of this. All the things to do with your computer IT things, all the type of things you might wanna send out to them too. It was very, very informative.
Cool.
And then we had, Billy Johnson with CCCIA, and they talked about what they do, and as far as businesses, and they try, we talked about the trees and a bunch of different things that go on, and anyway, so it was very, very important, but I'll leave you one of these and you can.
Okay, we'll scan it, and we'll put it up in files for you, and if you don't have access to files, we can send it to you. If you
Could
like.
you show where net files that is?
Sure.
It's under resources and hurricanes?
Just look up hurricanes.
Okay.
We also have the 2021 presentation from the county. The link is right here at the bottom. Just copy and paste that into your browser. That's something you can send out to your customers or watch for yourself.
Cool.
So that's an all county purpose, not just a realtor purpose.
Let's hope we don't have to use
There
it.
you go.
Exactly.
Let's hope we don't have to use them. But it's always better to be prepared, right?
Of course.
Yes. And make all your little pill balls with the M&Ms in there, because it really does work. 2 M&Ms and an adult beverage. Works every
Okay,
time.
that'll work.
Works every
2 M&Ms and an adult.
and adult beverage. Okay.
I actually say,
We're talking about insurance and mortgages and all that stuff that you have to do in order to get a title. And there's all kinds of issues with title, not just hurricane, but I'm sure there's other issues that
I
pop
thought I was
up.
only talking about hurricanes,
There you go.
because that was going to be the shortest part of this whole thing.
This is Todd from Jewelstone Title. He's from Minnesota.
And I've been in this long enough that I forgot all my cards, so.
Hey, Todd is awesome. Todd did the closing on the house that I had. He was really awesome.
And he is an attorney in I don't know how many
Yes,
states.
he is.
Just this one.
Just this.
One's in
But we got him out of his office, ladies and gentlemen. So he's going to share some, but feel free to ask any question at all.
Well, here's the thing, to be honest, a hurricane doesn't affect us, because if the buyer wants to close, the seller wants to close, the bank can close, and we got power, we're closing. That's gonna be a pizza. No, but seriously, that's pretty much how it works. After Irma, we had power right away, and we probably closed a couple cash deals within 2 or 3 days in Gateway.
Cash, yeah, no problem.
So, like I said, if we're open, we're closing. That's pretty much, I think, every title company's mantra. So, but other than that, you guys have any questions about title?
What happens with like recording everything with the county
Just, I mean,
and?
we don't, well, our office does not electronically record it,
Okay.
because there can be so much fraud in that. Because truly, all you have to do is record a colored document, or scan a colored document that's reportable. So we actually, with Lee County, we walk them down, the rest of the county, we FedEx them, but we did not electric record. If they're up and running, you can't even record.
that's,
But that's, like I said, we just don't want to do it because if somebody records a deed in our name and we didn't report it, we can say we didn't report it.
I have a question.
Sure.
So on a trust,
Mhm.
I'm listing property, it's in a trust.
Mhm.
How much paperwork does the title company need? Do you need the whole trust or just anything that has to do with real estate?
Well, it depends. Has the trustee passed away?
Let's say no.
If it's successor, well, if the trustee's still there, and if it's a cash deal, honestly, we just need a trust certificate.
Okay.
And that should have all the information, and a lot of times the estate planners put that together. Now, if the trustee has passed away, or there's a new trustee, then we need the whole trust, because we gotta review it to make sure that they follow what's in the trust. Because the trust, basically, obviously, it's like it dictates how the trust works, it dictates how the trustees can work, what they can do, whatever. In fact, I had one probably 10 years ago where after the trustee passed away, the trust failed. So the property had to go into probate. It was drafted by an estate, or just a CPA. They should have been drafting trusts.
I don't know why people bother doing this.
So, yeah, and like I said, it just depends on that. And if there's a mortgage involved, if the mortgage company allows it, then, well, that's a seller never wins, so it doesn't matter. But on the buyer side, if the mortgage company will allow it to go in a trust, the bank will need the full trust, so will the title company.
Yeah, it sounds like we need an informational seminar on trusts next.
Yeah.
Boy.
I have some input on that from the lender standpoint. Every trust is different.
Yeah, exactly.
And like I said, they need to review because they're loaning money to the trust.
Yeah.
It's a
You know.
big
So,
one, right?
so in other words, if you're listing a property that is in a trust, you need to have the trust.
I would get the trust
Documents.
document because, well, you got to make sure that the trustees actually sign
Yeah,
the
make
document.
sure
Because
that-
if the property's in a trust and you got, it's Jane Doe's trust,
Right.
but John Doe's contracting to list it, you don't know if he can actually sign off on the trust.
Right.
So you actually have to make sure. It's the same thing with a power of attorney. Somebody may say, I have power of attorney. You need to get a copy of that power of attorney. You've got to make sure it conforms to Florida law if it's a homestead property as well. So, because that power of attorney will be no good for the closing, number one. Number two, had that in the past too, where somebody said, I gave him power of attorney, and they basically said, I gave you power of attorney. You can't do that. Yeah, I know, it's crazy, isn't it? You would be surprised.
You would be surprised.
But yeah, it's like I said, when any of that stuff comes, the agents I deal with, I tell them, make sure you get a copy of the power of attorney, make sure you get a copy at the very least, a trust certificate. Because we're gonna need it all anyway. So,
Death certificate.
that's another thing too, you're right. A lot of times people will call and say, listen, I took my spouse is not on the tax collector website, we cleaned up title. No, you didn't. You called the property appraiser, you faxed over a death certificate, they removed that person's name.
Yeah.
That's all they did. They didn't record the death certificate and the other documentation to be recorded. So that, you're right, getting death certificates. Yeah.
So I have a realtor who's asking, they have, let's say they have some properties that they rent, and they've moved from their location to another house. So how do they get their records changed? Can you go online to change your address on?
Yeah, you go to talk to the property
You
appraiser,
go-
property appraiser talks to the tax collector, and that's it.
Okay.
Because every once in a while, you'll have a bad address put on there. And the only person that can call it tech is the homeowner, because they don't want just somebody out of the blue just changing mailing addresses.
Thanks.
I'm assuming that all these trusts and everything you're talking about are done in the United States.
Yeah.
Is there anything unusual?
I've never seen a foreign trust.
From Europe where they can
I've
be
never seen a foreign trust. I can honestly say that. Basically, if we got one in though, I would just send it to underwriting for them to review. Just to double check it. Because actually,
Ouch.
it's a foreign, I've been to see a foreign trust, I've seen foreign corporations, but I've never dealt, I can honestly, I've never
I was
dealt
dealing with
trust.
something, but I don't know what, I might sell it, might not. It's in a trust, but it's a US trust, but the person is now living in Colombia. I think she had a US social security number at one time.
Is she a US citizen?
No, she was a resident for a while.
If she's no longer a green card holder, no longer,
I don't think so.
well, you're still gonna need the trust number one because it governs the property.
Right.
But based on that, then what you're talking about now is FERPA.
Yes, FERPA and
And-
trust.
Well, the trust, that doesn't change. You still need a copy of the trust, all that
Okay,
good
she
stuff,
gets
whatever.
to
goes
sign
on.
off as long as she's alive.
Yeah, and individually as trustee of the trust. When it comes to FERPTA though, if she doesn't fall within the exemptions, she's more than likely gonna be subject to FERPTA.
Exactly.
So in that case, you wanna contact some, and this is my suggestion, is to contact an accountant that is versed in FERPTA and have them,
Special.
exactly, have them set up a withholding certificate so that the money's actually held at the title company versus the IRS, get the withholding certificate, pay what's owed to the IRS, and then send the rest of the money to whomever.
Meanwhile, they bought this property years ago, they're like, what? I gotta do this, gotta what?
Well, it's easy to buy,
in a
it's
trust.
hard to
We
sell.
can just, yeah, I know, then get it.
Is,
Look at that.
is a property owned in a trust versus owned in an LLC? Which one is more protected?
It all depends on what you're doing.
What?
That's a whole different thing.
Oh.
They're both separating ownership and control.
A different.
The LLC controls the LLC controls it, the property. The trust controls the property. But the LLC, if you put an LLC, there's other things. They both separate ownership and they give you that protection. But you can't homestead a property if it's an LLC. You know, if you want to take a loan on it, it's a commercial property versus a residential property. So you've got to talk to your financial planner to find out how you want to do that.
Yeah.
Anything else?
But a trust can homestead.
Correct. I mean, there's some things why Florida's exempt on things, so it's up to you if you want to put it like for estate tax. Your homestead's exempt, your homestead's exempt anyway from liability outside of a federal tax lien, a state tax lien, or mortgage, like, mortgage you allow on there, or a mechanics lien. So they're exempt from that, so, and also exempt from bankruptcy.
And you can't put your house in a trust if you have a child under 18.
So Dawn and Todd are doing a trust class?
I have a trust that I couldn't put my house in there because of my child being a.
Probably because it's homesteaded, that's why.
Yeah.
Well, with the
They're homestead too, and you're giving it
Well, no,
away.
because it's because the homestead, the reason being, and this is my understanding of it from a title standpoint, is this could take a while anyway. It's kind of,
On promulgated rate.
oh yeah,
Title, yeah, is there anything new and exciting in title insurance? It just rock and rolls?
yeah, we're just slammed, that's it. Search and take
Speaking of
them.
slam,
Huh?
speaking of slam, is a title company, because on the contract on the standard FAR, it says titles to be delivered to buyer within 15 days of closing or whatever. If a title company is slammed, do they just get to 5 days before closing come and tell you, hey, by the way, you don't have a clear title, hey, by the way, blah, 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 hey, and they never even met their deadline? Like, is there anything that, is a title company just okay to do whatever they want, or?
No, but you gotta remember something.
Just wondering,
No, but-
in all seriousness, like.
Well, no, I know, but the seller, technically, the seller picked the title company. So
Yes.
the title company's working with the seller. So therefore, the seller is not delivering title.
Yes,
So it's really on the seller.
so, but on the 14th day, or, I don't know, if it's 15 days before closing or.
Most of
Well, no, I know what you're saying, but at that
So
point,
how does the seller enforce something like that?
I mean, if you can't get it, you
Yeah.
can't get it. It's like
Yeah.
the inspection periods, like all the other periods. If you can't get it, you just can't get it.
Yeah, like the searches are checking really.
They are.
Yeah.
We just had a big blowout with our underwriter today because they're taking up to 3 weeks to get a search back right now.
Wow.
But that's short compared to what I've heard. Fidelity's 5 weeks. I've heard, Westcor is longer. The only reason why we do it is one of the reasons why we're getting 3 weeks is because we're one of their top producers. But other than that, I mean, it is taking forever to get these things back.
What I'm trying to see is that.
No, I know what you're saying.
Would that be a loophole for a buyer to back?
Yeah, you
up?
can't
Should we be extending
But yeah,
the right offers that like title would take up, like?
Well, I would. I mean, actually, right now, I wouldn't put a contract less than 30 days.
For title.
For anything, because everything, appraisals are taking longer. That's on a cash deal. Finance is probably 45 to 60.
Yeah, my financing is about 30 to 45 days, but
Yeah.
you're right, it's the appraiser and the
It's-
surveyor right
Oh, yeah,
now.
surveys are taking, we're lucky, we've been using the same survey company, we've done a lot of surveys, they're taking
Still.
12 to 15 days, which used to be 3 to 4.
So then it'd be a really good idea if I had a new listing
even though I don't have a buyer yet,
Yes,
to
I
send
know what you're saying.
everything to
Send
a
it to your title
search.
company, ask them to search it.
Good idea.
You're right, that is exactly.
Trying to see how
There will be a small charge for your seller, don't think this is a free, I mean, don't think of it as a free service. I
No,
mean,
but it's
because-
really good.
I mean, back in
Well,
the day,
it's a good idea, because like I said, it takes a long time to get it back. And on top, it takes time to clear it, depending on what's on there. And trying to get a hold of anybody to clear stuff right now is difficult.
Yeah.
So like I said, the whole process is taking longer. And regardless if it's a cash or a finance deal, just remember this, the same amount of work for a $7,000 lot in Lehigh Acres is the same amount of work as $1 million lot on the river. It all takes the same time, it all goes through the same process. It can be, well, it is worse because you're making less money, but.
Yeah, but it could be more.
Well, a lot of times it
The
is.
lot, the title is a mess.
A lot of times they are.
But I think you brought up a good point. The more you can do beforehand,
Oh, yeah.
the better off you're gonna be. If you think you've got a house and you haven't done it, or now with all the insurance things, call up Kara, insurance, call Dawn, and say, hey, would this house go for an FHA? Will it go VA? Because those things seem to be moving a little bit as well as far as what they'll accept. Because the last thing you want to do is put FHA in the MLS, and then it doesn't occur, then it's not, and you got angry people all over the
I
place.
have no idea.
Yeah.
40-year-old roof. FHA. okay.
Right, we used to say, oh, there's 3 to 5 years left, it'll be fine for FHA, but it might not do now, so.
Yeah,
That's
well,
a
I
lot.
don't have any issues really, but I think it's kind of common sense sometimes too, like, people don't have that anymore.
Yeah, forget about that.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, you're asking a lot.
But here's the other thing with that though, with the searches, we will do them. I mean, we won't, actually, we'll just charge them a closing. Because we can transfer the search to the next person. So it's not like you run a search per person. If they're open and you haven't issued a policy, then you can do that. Because then we just constantly update them. Because the process, unless you're doing them in-house, which most companies don't do them in-house anymore, because of the fact there's so much liability. When I first got into this, we used to do them in-house. So we could turn something around in a couple of days. But you had to run your report, you had to, basically do all the things an examiner does, which is great, but if the title company misses something, the underwriter pays the insurance, will pay the insurance, or pay the loss, but they'll come back after the title company for it. So that's why Attorney's Title Fund actually went under, because they had a bunch of claims on the East Coast that put them under, and that's why Old Public took them over. So it doesn't make any sense to do your searches in-house anymore. So, but that's why they're taking so long, because they're all going to the plan, basically. So, but we will run them. If anybody wants to send a listing over, we'll run it. So, preemptively, and it will save time. Whether you still put a 2-week close on there is beyond me, because you still got to order estoppels.
Yeah.
You still got to order, different searches, that kind of stuff. The mortgage company still got to do their job. So that's.
With that, on estoppels and things, can I, sorry, I'm just really controlling if I can be. Specify, if we're choosing title, if we choose you, you have to order estoppel within X amount of contracts. A lot of title companies, they wait till like weeks in the deal to order estoppel because it costs money.
Well, we do, because here's the reason why.
So I'm just wondering how,
Well, no, we wait
Yeah.
until we know that the deal's gonna go through. At least that's
Yeah.
that's our protocol in our office. So letting us know that, that the mortgage has been approved. Or letting us know the buyer, the inspection period is passed and the buyer's going forward are big things, because we're spending at my office almost $10,000 a month in estoppels.
yeah.
That there's a chance that the deal could fall through and they're supposed to be refundable, but good luck trying to get that money back.
But
So-
some are, I just feel like pushing the limits because the estoppel people are behind and
Well, no, that's the thing, at least in
Yeah.
our office too, that's another thing too that we do. We always order the expedited one,
Which costs how much?
an extra $100. Well, actually, take that back, it depends. Depends on what
Yeah.
service they go through, whatever. It's supposed to be only $100.
Yeah.
But then you got a third-party charge, you got the convenience fee of using a credit card, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a huge disparity in prices of stuff.
Oh my God, yeah.
Huge.
But since they're only allowed to charge X amounts, they put.
Well, the top amount is, the top is $250, it's
Right.
10 business days.
Right.
If you want it on 3 business days, they're supposed to add an extra $100, but then they throw third-party fees on there.
That's state law. That's state law. But then they add all the little other crap.
Right.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing is, to help your title companies out, whoever you're using, just give them more time. Give them, if they're willing to do your search ahead of time, see if they take advantage of it, but give them more time, because that's the thing. It's taking so much on the back end for all the stuff they have to order. You know, and I know at our office, we're not taking estoppel letters fees up front, we're paying those. We're not taking survey fees up front because we get fought on that. So, and I don't even know how many survey fees we pay a month that don't go through.
Well, this property will probably still be sold.
Well, maybe or may not be. You know, depending on, like, for example, Collier County, the buyer picks title.
Oh, that's really
So we've got to pay for all that stuff up front. And if a deal falls through, you know, good luck trying to get anything out of anybody.
Yeah.
You know, that's why you guys take appraisal fees up front.
Yeah, I know a lot of title companies make the buyer sign the paper that they'll pay for their appraisal no matter what.
We tried it, we got a lot of pushback, so we gave up, honestly.
We just had a call today that they're not, one of our agents, they won't order the appraisal until, this is the lender. They are making the buyer write a check to the appraisal
Yeah.
company separate. And they won't order the appraisal till the buyer walks in with a check.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
We have to give the appraisal up front. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but you don't actually know they're making them write it directly to the appraisal.
Oh, we have an appraisal website, that's why, that doesn't make
Yeah,
sense.
but they're not, but they're saying you have to walk it in.
So, I mean, that's the reason why it takes, and this is pretty much a lot of the time, that's why it takes a little
I
longer.
don't know, it wasn't on.
It's good to know. We're all electronic, I don't know.
I've been telling my customers that the reason that the appraisal isn't ordered is because the home inspection period hasn't passed.
Well, the appraisal I don't know about, because that's a lender issue.
Right, I know,
But the survey, but for a survey, you're right, until we know that deal's gonna go through, you know, we try not to spend people's money, is what, that's our whole goal, because let's face it, you've got a lot of people putting 1 to 2, 3% down or whatever, you've got a lot of people that are scraping every time they get together to close. We don't wanna spend any more money for them, and we don't wanna spend any more money for the seller, because we try not to rock the boat. You know, yeah, they cost money, you know, we get, you know, obviously a lot of it gets paid at closing, otherwise we'd be out of business.
Yeah.
But, you know, you've got to balance that. And with the agent helping us, it makes it a lot easier to balance
I've
those
actually
things.
been putting a 60-day closing on.
That's great.
And that's because it takes so long to get the inspection period done. And if the inspection period doesn't pass, and you order the appraisal, then the buyers are paid for not only the inspection, but the appraisal too. And so they're ticked,
Yeah, oh yeah.
because you've messed them up, because you didn't inform them what was going on.
Good luck getting a
So if you're doing
$60.
Collier County, look at the
That's,
neighbor on
yeah,
Ford,
nobody wants
because
that,
the
no
neighbor
sellers
on
want,
Ford
you're
is
right.
different.
Yeah, and the sellers want to know about that too when you take listings. Well, look, the buyer is offered a 60-day inspection period because of this, and this.
Get as much, that's why you want to get as much done up front as you can. If you can do it, if the seller's willing to pay for the inspection up front, which is like $400, $500, have that home inspection right there, and I would put it right there on the MLS, here it is. Here's exactly what's wrong with it, because none of the sellers want appraisal contingencies, they don't want inspection contingencies, they don't want squat anymore. So it's up. But the buyers are getting a little smarter, and there's some pushback. So tell the seller, you really want your property to stand out, go ahead and pay for you could even pay for an appraisal up front, whichever.
Well, and I will tell you this though.
As much as you can pay for up front and get it out there.
The one thing we do is when we do get a contracted house, we order title that day. Because like I said, we'll eat those fees, whatever. You know, it's with our underwriter, but we're not worried about that. So like I said, and most title companies do that. The minute they get that contract, then they order title. So it's, like I said, it's just it's a giant mess right now. And it's just, and like everybody said, everybody's just got to be patient, you know. Other than that, let's see here.
So where's your office now? I know you're not at the atrium anymore.
What? We're not? No. No, we're just down the street. But I had my cards, and they would have been on there. Yeah, we're
Fountain Court.
Yeah, we're just down the street.
Fountain Court.
It's right next door to Riverwalk.
I know where Fountain Court is.
Oh, yeah.
But you close all over Florida.
Yeah.
Because we are in Tampa and the villages and all that. So.
Yeah, we do stuff all over. Other than that, you know, the things that we're finding on our side would probably make your life easier, make everybody else's life easier. Make sure you send contact information for everybody over. That's always a hard one. If you're representing a seller, make sure you get the contact information for the HOA and send it to the title company, regardless of who your title company is. You know, there's a section actually on the back of the contract for you to put contact information.
Which nobody does really offer.
I don't like putting it.
We let her sit over the sheet though, regardless who you use.
Yeah, I use a
Like,
transaction.
some people.
We have a nice transaction form.
Well, you guys do, but there's a lot of times when people just send stuff over and you're like, can you send me this, can you send me
Yeah, you
this?
never lose hair, that's crazy.
Or the realtor, you don't know who the realtor is either.
That's another one that happens.
Because they have to put their name on the damn contract.
This is true.
Yeah,
I don't take those.
Winners, right?
The other misconception too,
Who are you?
one thing I was gonna say too, the other misconception we've seen too a lot lately is e-closings, virtual closings, that kind of stuff. We have found, at least on our side of things, the e-notary it's too confusing for most people. It's hard, it's whatever. But to my knowledge, and you could probably help me with this, you guys won't accept an e-sign note.
No.
Yeah.
Exactly, so there throws out the e-sign notary, e-sign everything else. So you have to have a wet closing for a mortgage buyer.
Yeah.
And we've shortened it up, so not a big packet
Yep.
doesn't have to be, so there are components that can now electronically be signed, but there's a, that
Yeah,
skinny.
the note, the mortgage, the riders to the mortgage, probably, I'm guessing, well, the 1003 can be signed, depending on the company.
Yeah.
But a lot of your affidavits have to be signed, obviously, in front of a notary. The other thing is, the only time you can have basically a virtual closing is buyer cash only, period. The seller cannot sign virtually because you cannot record a copy of the deed on the public. I mean, you could try the e-notary stuff, but again, you have to have witnesses and all that good stuff, and it's just too difficult. The way Florida set it up, it's just too difficult. But you need a wet signed deed. Basically the deed's the most important thing. So, but like I said, the only time you can have an e-sign is buyer cash. Yeah, that's it. Mortgage can't. And actually, some lenders.
You still have to have a deed signed.
Huh?
You still have to.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the seller side. From the seller side of it, though, that has to be wet signed. Right.
Always.
But some lenders we've run into will not accept e-sign CDs by the seller. They have to be wet signed. There's been a few, but we had one crazy lender years ago that you couldn't write your name through the word seal. Did you guys ever run into that? Yeah, you literally couldn't. Yeah, the word seal that's at the end of the note, at the end of the mortgage, you literally couldn't write the name through it. Otherwise, it'd reject it.
Huh.
It was in their closing instructions.
Isn't all this what remote closers are for? I mean, don't you?
Mobile closer, but you do. But here's the problem with that. Sometimes trying to get one is hard. On last note, late if you don't get a lot of notice. Number one. Number two, a lot of people don't want to pay for it, and they're getting expensive because they're booked up.
If they're not here, what else are they gonna do?
Well, that's what we do normally. We got a company we use,
Flying
but
down.
oh, I know. And we use a company, but the problem is they don't know where they're going to be because they're going to your house or whatever. But you got to understand, the clients sometimes just don't tell you everything. I know. So like I said, yeah, it's. I mean, obviously we love having closings in house, but and we used to, we got a mobile service that we use that's good. But then every state too charges different, depending on the state you're in. So and some states are attorney driven, some states are you can use it.
Welcome to the USA.
How do you handle out of country transactions?
Yeah, that's a mess.
Well, that's a good one because I have one going in Norway right now.
For the most part.
What we do is we email out the seller's docs ahead of time.
Okay.
So they'll print them off, they'll get them signed in the country they're in, and then we'll have them overnight it back to us.
Is it really gonna be overnighted if it's in
Oh, yeah.
another country?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have overnight services. Well, no, we can.
It could be like 5 days.
No,
Organize
you
to
can.
get to that
You
country
can.
from that
No, but
country
you can
to
pay for
them
it.
is
We just
different.
Canada. I know Norway. They have overnight services. Germany. No, but if you're doing it to Cambodia, probably
Yeah,
not.
that's probably.
Third world countries.
Nah,
Yeah. So
Libya, probably not.
yeah.
Well, you don't have to go that far. Brazil and Argentina
Yeah,
and
Brazil,
Mexico also not.
Mexico.
Well, Mexico.
Mexico maybe, maybe.
Yeah.
But once it gets to that, I mean, I know how the mail is in my country. Everybody's tracking your shit out to see if there's electronics first, so they can steal it, and then they might send you mail. So,
Well, but that's why we email it to the client.
But the thing is, the embassies are shut for the most part.
Yeah. Well, now, yeah,
Now,
you're right.
That's a
it
disaster.
doesn't get there.
But it also too depends on the client. Because some, like the gentleman I deal with in Norway, obviously he knew what he was doing because he got the docs on it was yesterday. I already got copies of it, and we always ask to have them emailed back to us so we can review them before they go.
Okay.
He got his notary